thanks everybody for coming out. Appreciate coming out. Everybody likes to go towards the back, huh? You guys been getting something out of the talks, the ones that have been here? Okay.
Definitely.
So the one we're going to talk about tonight is massive, okay? This is probably going to be one of my favorite and most exciting for the year. Not favorite for a good reason, but just because it's information that people need to know, okay? Someone asked me a good question this morning because I was telling them that I was doing this talk, and they said, their new patient, they said, why, you're a chiropractor, why are you going to talk about cancer? You know, what's the point of that? And that's a great question, because why would I talk about cancer as a chiropractor? I'm not an oncologist. I'm not someone who, studies cancer every day, so why would I talk about it? Very good question, okay? Prevention, it's a very important health-related topic right now, okay? We're going to go over some stats that are just startling, but for the most part, it's because you guys deserve to be educated, right, on cancer and what ways to go about preventing it because of the staggering stats that are out there, okay? So everything that I talk about, it's not saying you have to do this. It's not saying this is the way it is, okay? The leading experts on cancer, you think they say the same thing? No, okay? So there's a lot of different approaches, even when you ask, if you were to ask two leading experts, what is cancer, they would tell you two different things, okay? So there is an idea, which we're going to talk about, okay? And there are definite ways that you can prevent cancer. Because a lot of people think, what? I'm going to try to prevent cancer, but I can just catch cancer. And that's not just the case where I can just catch cancer, okay? So this right here, this is to start off, some stats just to think about, just where we are in this country right now. So 1 out of 2 men, or 1 out of 3 women, because they take care of themselves a little bit better, okay? Right now are in stats to develop cancer at some point in their lives, okay? So 50% of men, about 1 in 3 women. So if we look at the room, we're talking, say 40%, so say maybe 8 people, okay? So that becomes that much more important that we know what is cancer and how do we address it, all right? So in 2014, there were 1.65 million new cases of cancer diagnosed in the United States. Cancer is the leading cause of death for children 5 to 14 years of age, okay? So it used to be, by far, accidents used to be the #1 cause of death. Now it's become cancer. Okay. This is probably the most important. Global cancer rates are expected to rise 75% by 2030. Okay, so that's 14 years away. So that's almost, when you're talking about that's almost doubling. Okay, so the stats are already this high. So we got to do something about it, right? If we can, and that's what we're going to talk about. This is the most important question. Okay, why is the body not healing itself? Okay, so when it comes to cancer, something is off, correct? Okay, so this becomes the barrier with health. Because cancer is actually, I would call it a normal process, okay? Because it's normally adapting for something going haywire, okay? And we're going to talk about that. But this is going to be something we're going to have to come back to because this is the most important question. Because if I cut my hand, what's going to happen?
Bleeding.
It's going to heal, okay? So with cancer, things go haywire, and the body's actually trying to heal in a way, but it's doing it in a negative way. Okay? So what is cancer? And this is the conversation where we can go a lot of different directions with it. I'm just going to give you some information. Okay? I'm not here to step on any toes. People don't have to believe what I believe. Okay? I'm just going to give you information that I've learned so you can be well equipped. All right? So does everybody know we all have cancer cells?
Yes.
Okay? No? So we all have cancer cells. You have cancer cell, I have cancer cells, okay? We all have cancer cells. So why are we all diagnosed with cancer?
Because of immunity?
Immunity, okay? So here's a question to start off if anybody knows this. You get bonus points if you know it. Can you get cancer if you have a strong immune system?
Yes.
Why not?
Yeah. No. I'm just going to go against it.
The answer is actually no, you can't.
Can't.
There's no way, okay? So that's kind of the factor when it comes to cancer, is if your immune system's strong enough, there's no way for your body to be able to get cancer. Because you have to have some sort of suppression, or your immune system has to not be working at its best for that to happen, okay? So that's somewhere to start, is just, we all have cancer cells. Because of our immune system is able to keep things in check, okay? So it doesn't get out of hand, all right? Okay? So first off, a cancer cell. So what is a cancer cell? Okay, so basically there's a lot of different takes on it. but most of them would say that the energy source of the cell, called the mitochondria, you guys ever heard of that? Okay, so the mitochondria, a lot of people would say that that goes bad. Okay, for some reason that goes bad, and then things get out of hand, and you get these big lumps or bumps over time that get diagnosed as cancer. Okay, so something like we went back to why is the body not healing itself? It's actually trying to do something. It's just for some reason it's causing that inherent energy source of the cell to go bad. Okay, so the mitochondria is not doing what it's supposed to. Okay, now there's one thing that cancer loves. Okay, and just flourishes on. Any idea what it is?
Stress.
Sugar and acid.
Sugar and acid. We got sugar.
Stress.
Stress. Okay, stress. So we're gonna definitely talk about factors. Okay. Cancer loves sugar. Okay. So like if someone has anybody ever heard of a PET scan, a PET scan? Okay. So to analyze for like the size of a tumor with cancer, a PET scan will be done, and what they do with the PET scan is they feed the tumor sugar. They actually give it a type of sugar to be able to see it. Okay, because it'll eat it up so they can see how big it is. So just something to think about, that cancer absolutely loves sugar. We'll talk more about not too in depth, but a little bit about the physiology of how that works, okay? So it thrives off of sugar, okay? So someone gets cancer. Now one thing that happens, now this is different from your organs. So let's say when your organ develops, let's say we're thinking of the liver, it develops from one cell, one becomes two, two becomes four, and it grows until it reaches a certain point, okay? Now your liver doesn't keep growing because it's not the size of a basketball, right? Or bigger, okay? Because it has this inherent property where it can shut off its cellular growth, okay? So you grow up, it gets bigger, and then it comes to a point where, it's not just going to keep growing, okay? Now cancer is different, okay? Because it doesn't have those cells that turn off. So once it gets to a point where it's growing, it's not like, hey, I'm the liver or the heart, I'm going to stop growing. It just keeps growing and growing and growing. And it has the capability to. Now it's not always going to do that, but it has the capability to keep growing and growing and growing, which the other cells in the body, a normal cell, which is part of the organ or part of the bodily system, doesn't do. Okay? Has anybody ever heard of this word cachexia? Okay. So cachexia is basically the body wasting, muscle wasting. This is how actually most people who die of cancer die of cachexia, or they die from some sort of infection. Okay. So the thing is, the cancer, what it does is, like we were talking about how it grows and it feeds. So it starts feeding on everything in the body and just keeps growing and growing and growing, but it's eating all the tissues around it, okay? So eventually what happens is the body's just not having enough food and calories and sources of nutrition that you just basically waste away. So that's why someone with cancer, why they get so skinny, if you see them with terminal types of cancer that have been ongoing for a long time, is their body's basically wasting away. Okay? And it's because of something called cachexia. So statistically, this is published in a couple of papers, about 42 to 46% of people that die of cancer, it's because of something called cachexia. So the cancer is kind of a symptom or a side effect that causes this, okay? But this is actually a lot of times what unfortunately causes death. So when you're thinking about that and the body's wasting away, it becomes that much more important to address things from a nutritional standpoint, okay? Because if we can stop that process or be able to do something different so the body's not wasting, we want to be able to do that, right? Okay. And I use that word adaptation. So cancer, when you're talking about the physiology of it, it's adapting for a change in the body, okay? So like I would almost call it a normal process, because the thing is it's adapting for something gone haywire, and there's various ways that it can go haywire, okay? And we're going to talk about that. So I mentioned a tumor and a mass. So there's three typical routes. Oh, let me go back here. There's three routes typically that cancer is treated for the most part. Any idea what they are?
Radiation.
Radiation? There's three ways that the cancer is typically addressed initially. Any idea what they are?
Surgery.
Surgery, we said radiation surgery.
Chemotherapy.
Okay. Surgery, cut, chemotherapy, and I'll explain that word, poison, and radiation burn, okay? So we're going to cut something off, so you have a tumor, I said a bump or a lump, so you're going to cut it out, okay? So chemotherapy, poison it is. I mean, medical journals will say that, but the thing about it is what's it trying to do? It's trying to poison the bad cells, right? It's trying to kill them. What's it also do? Kill good cells, okay? Can you get cancer if you have a strong immune system?
No.
No, okay, so what happens, what are you killing? You're killing good cells.
It
That doesn't make sense right off the
weakens
bat.
your immunity, so it goes against.
Okay, so it's just something to think about. So, and again, I'm not saying to do or to not do, I'm just giving you ideas, okay? Just make you think a little bit, okay? And then radiation, okay, so we're gonna burn. So we got 3 ways that we typically attack, okay? Cut, poison, burn, okay? Have you heard about this before? Like people say, oh, we got it all.
Right.
Does it ever come back?
Yes, it does.
Any ideas why?
Because they didn't get it all.
They didn't get it all. So if something in your body's going haywire, it has abnormal cells that are forming, it forms a mass, okay? I radiate it, I cut it, I burn it, okay? So I'm going to weaken the immune system, all right? And I take this thing out. So am I good to go?
No, because
No.
they're taking care of symptoms, but not the problem.
There you go. Okay? Because we never address the cause. Because the thing is, something caused it to go haywire, so if I go in there and I address it that way, it's kind of like this, okay? Let's say I have this plant, I have black spots in the leaves of the plant. Or a better analogy, let's say I had a ear of corn. There's black kernels of corn, okay, that are growing in my corn. So what do?
Cut off those pieces.
Cut off those pieces? Or I just take them out, cut them out, and we'd be good to go?
Still not good to go.
No, why not?
Eat that corn?
Okay, because you address the symptom,
Yeah.
But
okay,
not the cause.
but you would never address the root cause, okay? So the thing with that is a lot of times we'll take out the thing that's most prominent, but you didn't change the physiology or the structure of the body. Does that make sense? Okay. And we got a lot to talk about with this, but just kind of get some seeds planted in your head, okay? Now the other thing, we're going to come back to this, because these two can become, this is the problem they can create, because we talked about weakening the immune system, but this one right here, as published in a lot of research, can create a lot of secondary cancers, okay? You guys ever heard of a secondary cancer? So they have cancer in one spot and then it spreads it somewhere else, okay? So the radiation, what it does, because the way it burns the cancer, it has the ability to spread the cells, the cancer cells, okay? So a lot of times they'll say, hey, I get this, but then it shows up somewhere else. And you hit that word. So we got the symptom, but again, what's causing it, okay? So what's causing it? And this is the thing. So I think it was Nixon, maybe? Was he 1970?
No, Nixon was
Yeah,
Nixon was before
it was 70s.
Early
75 maybe.
75?
74,
Okay.
75.
Because he's the one that really attacked or said, hey, we're going to go after cancer, okay? He implemented the first bill that, hey, we're going to work on this, we got the war on cancer, and his main objective was when he first implemented that, in 5 years, they're going to find a cure for cancer, okay? So every year since, cancer's gotten worse. So it's the approach, what's going on, why is all this stuff happening, okay? So again, a healthy body, self-healing, and self-regulating, okay? So self-healing, that's key. Cancer is not an accident, okay? So, this is from a report, this was in London, okay? So this guy, he was teaching his medical students 1900 in London, and he came across something. So he was telling his medical students, this is true, so he's telling his medical students, you gotta come and see this patient, okay? I found something that you're never gonna see again, okay? And because of the type it is, you're probably never gonna see it again. This was in 1900, okay? So what he found is someone had cancer, and he said, you're probably never gonna see this again. And the type of cancer it was lung cancer. And that's the #1 cancer in the US, okay? So that was 1900, so really not that long ago, okay? So if that was so rare, then why is it so prevalent, okay? So when I say this, do you guys think this is true or think this is fake? Man-made disease.
It's
Real.
You think it's real?
No, because of everything that we eat and what we're doing with our body. That's what, yeah.
Because there's populations where there's no heart disease, no cancer, no diabetes.
Exactly. Yeah.
So, and it's just, again, what influences are there, okay? So we don't catch cancer, okay? So I have abnormal, even though I said it's a normal process. So abnormal cell development is a normal physiological process. So what that basically means is your body's forming abnormal cells because something's wrong with the environment. So it's trying to adapt. It's just not able to adapt in the right way, okay? Now the immune system, like we talked about, okay, so mutated cells are cells that change in a negative way. The immune system helps regulate those, like we talked about, okay? And if the immune system's not at peak capacity, then it doesn't have the ability to maintain things properly in the body. And we're going to talk about the ways that can happen. Now this is important, because you'll come across this again and again if you look at stuff as far as cancer is without a doubt not a death sentence, okay? It happens for a reason, so for the most part, there's a pathway for it to be able to go back the right direction for a reason, okay? Is that always the case? Is there a limitation of matter? Potentially, and that's the part where you can't say yes or yes, you know, for sure. Okay? But this is something, because it's important to know that, because a lot of people, if they hear that word, because you can hear heart disease, someone can have a stent in their heart, stent put in their heart because they have a heart disease or something, and they're back at it, and they're like, hey, and they have a mindset that's a lot more positive, or someone has diabetes, or someone has a stroke, it's like, okay, I'm going to overcome this, but when someone hears cancer, it's different. Okay? So it's important to know that it is definitely not a death sentence. Now here's another, this you'll come across this stat again and again too. So 95% of cancers have no genetic link. Because you hear a lot, it's in my genes, it's in my genes, it's in my genes. Okay. So 95%, go ahead. Someone say something? Okay. So it goes back to what we're talking about. We're talking about lifestyle, environment, things of that nature. Okay. And this is, oh yeah, this is actually from pharmaceutical research. Okay. They're the ones saying that, okay, which is interesting. Now 5 of those percent that are genetic, have you guys ever heard of this word? I've used it once before, I know. Epigenetics?
No.
It's a word that basically got, I guess it got founded like 12 to 15 years ago, okay? So so I'll kind of break down the word for you. So genetics, okay, and then epi means around, okay? But the purpose of that, epigenetics, means that you can actually change your gene based on your lifestyle, okay? It's kind of the analogy, I don't like it, the one that I use, but it's like if you have a loaded gun, and that's your genes, you have a predisposition, you have a choice if you get to pull the trigger with what you do, okay? Our genes do not control our life. We can activate or deactivate, and that has to do with how we go about things. Do we exercise? Do we eat properly? Are we taking care of our immune system? That we have a choice based upon our actions, for the most part. Okay? Do not own the disease. So that's one thing. A lot of times people get a label. They identify by, hey, I have cancer. But again, you've got to remember that this is something that can be conquered. Okay? Because our body created it, can heal it. How does one acquire cancer, okay? This is very important. Cancer, think of this, cancer does not make one sick, rather a sick person gets cancer. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Does that make sense to you guys?
Yes.
It's a different way to think about it, okay? Cancer does not make one sick, but rather a sick person gets cancer. It's absolute truth, okay? But we're going to talk about kids too, okay? So we're going to talk about kids and cancer a little bit as well. So there's things that are going to change here a little bit, okay? So years of stressors, if I'm constantly stressed mentally, if I'm constantly putting stress on my body because all I eat is sugar, if I'm constantly stressed on my body because I don't exercise, I'm lining myself up for a statistic, unfortunately. So we have those choices, and they're not easy, but we do get to make those choices, okay? Because it all comes back. You're going to come across, if you come across any word or anything you're trying to promote tonight, it's just your immune system's role in cancer. Because if you have that strong immune system, your body is titanium against cancer. Okay? Environmental influence, we've talked about that. So infant toxic load. Okay? So here's what this means. So this is going to talk about kids a little bit. So with kids, why do you think kids get cancer? It's a very sad subject. Any ideas? You ever thought about it? Because there's a lot of mystery, right? We're going to throw a couple things at you just to think about, okay? So when they do cross-section, so if they do a cross-section of umbilical cord, this is nowadays, I've come across this a couple places. So on average, they do a cross-section of the umbilical cord, they'll find on average 297 carcinogenic chemicals in the umbilical cord. You guys know what carcinogenic means?
Yeah.
Cancer causing, okay? 297. Okay? I think that's actually from Harvard, I can't remember. But 297 carcinogenic chemicals. So that's getting transported right away.
Wow.
So again, what's going to keep that child protected? The immune system. It's just developing, but how can we get it strong? You know, because there's a lot of stuff we can't. We can't prevent, you know, the stuff that's in the food supply. To an extent, there's a lot of stuff we just can't prevent anymore the way our world is. Okay? But it's interesting to know that. Okay? So do you think what the mom eats can play a role, or the mom's stress can play a role in the child? And I'm not saying they do, it's just things to think about, okay? Because obviously if you're having that impact, those other things could potentially impact, okay? Here's another real interesting one. This will make you think just a little bit, okay? And I'm not trying to be controversial, but just something to think about. Ultrasounds. You guys know much about ultrasounds? No? Okay.
Yeah,
You think that can be bad for a baby?
I think you can.
How?
It's really.
Is it-
Rather radiation.
Yeah.
It's stimulating the placenta, not the placenta, the,
She knows the answer, huh?
oh, she knows.
No, you looked at her, she knows the answer.
She's laughing.
It's just something to think about, right? Okay. So ultrasound, to put a form of radiation, it's lower dosage, okay? But the one thing they actually do show, because they've actually done a lot of research like with autism in kids, is they put like it'll put a big sound wave that they say can influence even just potentially the brain. So there's a lot of factors inside of that where I understand someone wants to, they're excited, parents are excited, they want to see pictures, they want to know the sex, things like that. But when you look at something like this, it's just trying to figure out what other possible avenues have the rates climbed so much like with kids. So if there's little things you can do that might be able to prevent, it's worth investigating. And just like I always say, don't believe what I say, go do your own research, So you don't have to believe what I say, but just look into it if you want to, okay? Because it's something that is important. So again, what the mother's doing or not doing, we talked about what's going on with the, we're talking about the umbilical cord and even potential like something like ultrasound, how it could influence. Because we know right off the bat, what's a woman not supposed to get what's in that room? X-rays, okay? So that's another form of radiation, a little bit stronger than an ultrasound, but we know right off the bat, that's not good. Okay? So just something to think about. So again, a healthy human body is self-healing. You guys are going to learn that one, right? The healthy human body is self-healing and self-regulating. Okay? So I got 6 different things of balance, okay? So one of the things, if we're going to basically prevent or even heal from, we got to be able to create balance in the body. So this is what I mean by that. When something's going on as far as something like cancer, it's typically going to be toxicity or deficiency, okay? So what it means is I have too much of something or too little of something. So I may have too little vitamin D. I may have too little nutrition. I may have too little water. Or I may have too much of a toxic load. I may have too much whatever. I may have too much calories. Everything that says deficient, I may have excess, okay? So it can go either way. So what are some things I can do when we're looking at cancer as far as creating balance, okay? So we're going to go through 6 different things. This one I think is probably honestly the most important, okay? I can't remember what I was looking at, but it was from an oncologist, and he was saying when he sees a cancer patient, when they first get diagnosed, he knows if they're going to have cancer 5 years down the road, or they're not going to, or sorry, if they're going to have cancer still 5 years down the road, not going to make it, or going to be cancer-free. And he said it, just their mindset, just their attitude right off the bat. So just the power of that is tremendous, okay? So just when someone has, and you probably can look at, because everyone knows somebody who has cancer or themselves has had cancer, correct? And I'm sure people in this room definitely have probably had cancer. So one of the things that when you can create that mindset that, hey, this is not going to define me, I'm going to make it through this, and you're grateful for what you have, that's going to change stuff, okay? Because your thoughts influence your hormones, your immune system, okay? That's proven. So if my thoughts are very negative, what happens to my immune system? It gets weaker. Because one way to think about it, if someone has a lot of stress, especially emotional, what happens oftentimes? They get ill or something like that because of all the stress the body's under. So we know that that can influence with something like this, because if someone gets a cancer diagnosis, I don't know if you guys have heard about people being misdiagnosed with cancer before, but they can get very ill from being misdiagnosed because of the stress they put on their bodies. So it's a lot to take on, and I'm not saying this is easy, but to try to just have an understanding, hey, I can do this, very, very important. Because the thing at high stress, we increase cortisol function, which again is a stress hormone for the body, brings down the immune system, okay? And that's the thing a lot of times where someone gets sick when they're stressed a lot, high level of cortisol, okay? Blood sugar balance, okay? I mentioned that with the sugar and the PET scan, okay? But the thing about this is, so high carbohydrate, This, we talked about, now I talked about having a high protein diet, okay? Now excessively high protein, really, really high protein, okay, desensitizes insulin and leptin signal, okay? So let me explain this. So you guys know what insulin is? Okay? Some people call it like the fat storage hormone, technically, okay? So again, your body, it's going to disrupt its hormone signaling, okay, which can disrupt the internal chemistry. Leptin is what we call the satiety hormone, so it signals a feeling of fullness. So they kind of work opposite each other. But bottom line is, if I eat a ton of carbohydrates, sugar, white bread, white rice, things like that, it's going to affect my hormones, okay, which again can affect my internal system, okay? So these are all things you can just look at and try to piece together, because again, just the best you can do. It's not typically all or none, just things to think about when we're talking about something like cancer. Okay? Another thing, high carbohydrate diets typically cause weight gain, which again is going to suppress the immune system. And another key word, inflammation, okay? Because again, most disease processes, cancer, heart disease, diabetes, you go through them, they all start or have a high level of inflammation. So it becomes important to try to bring inflammation down, because it's going to start making the body have to adapt, so it's going to start going haywire, okay, with the abnormal cells and so forth. Okay? So mental balance, we got blood sugar balance, fatty acid balance. This is extremely important. We've talked about fats, but using something like high quality fish oil, I'll use an example, Nordic Naturals. They have a high level of these two things, EPA and DHA, which are the type of omega-3s that you want. But what they do is it brings inflammation down and helps keep the immune system strong. So that'd be something like if someone was diagnosed with cancer, it'd be a good idea to have a good fish oil supplement, because it's going to help boost the immune system.
What if
Okay?
you can't eat any fish at all?
Say what?
If you can't eat any fish at all,
Supplements.
Yep, absolutely.
I can't eat fish at all.
Oh, you can't eat fish at all?
No.
Okay. So you're saying, where do I get
Mm-hmm.
this?
What can I do? Yeah.
Okay. So the thing is, like flax seeds have a good
Yeah,
level of omega-3.
I have that, yeah.
Walnuts have a good level of
Mhm,
omega-3. Chia seeds have a good
Yep,
level of
got that.
omega-3. Okay. So I'd probably go those sources if
Okay.
you can't even go to that route.
Yeah.
Yep. Good question, though. I like this thing in the corner. The difference between happy people and unhappy people is their level of gratitude.
True.
It's true.
Okay.
Be thankful.
Because if you're thankful, can you be upset? It's really hard. You probably can, but it's almost impossible. And you can't have anxiety. That's the one thing. Stress and anxiety, if you're grateful, it's really hard to be anxious. So that's important. Okay. And this, you probably heard this again and again. They even advertise this one on commercials nowadays that I think it's probably for that Activia yogurt. I think that's where I've seen it. Like 80% of your immune system's in your gut. Okay. So your digestive system becomes very, very important. Okay. Because if we're talking the immune system is that important, how important is it that you try to keep your digestive system working properly, okay? So having healthy gut flora, so that means things like the probiotics in your system that are beneficial, we want to have that. And what it does, having a healthy gut helps the body with absorption of nutrients, okay? So you probably heard of someone with cancer, hey, I'm going to go out of juicing, you have all these smoothies, I'm going to have all these vegetables, things like that. Well, if I can't absorb it properly, there's really no point, okay? Because I got to be able to absorb it well. So we want to make sure that we do stuff that's going to create a healthy gut, okay? So examples, obviously you could have something like a probiotic or have foods that have a lot of probiotic in them. This is a good one right here, bone broth, okay? If anybody's looked into, you can look into like how to make a bone broth, a grass-fed bone broth. So really good for your immune system, okay? Really good for your digestive system. If anybody has a lot of digestive issues, you probably want to look that up on the internet, how to make a grass-fed bone broth, and start having that. It'll help you out a lot, okay? Because it's going to get a lot of good probiotics and such into the system. Movement balance, if we don't move, okay, here's one thing, okay? We're gonna get to it, but I'm gonna get ahead of myself, okay? Because I've said this before, so 1931, a guy named Otto Warburg won the Nobel Peace Prize. He said cancer can't live in a what? Any idea?
Alkaline. Or
It can. Yep, you got it. So cancer can't live in an acidic environment.
Acidic.
no, it likes
My fault.
acid.
Can't, yeah.
I'm like,
Cancer can't live in an alkaline environment, so cancer lives in an acidic environment. So it craves sugar.
sugar.
Okay? So the thing with that, what I'm getting at, when we're moving, our body creates oxygen. Okay? So it's another thing that's going to allow cancer cells to die or be regulated properly. Okay? Because if we're creating cancer cells consistently, it's like, what do we do to regulate them? So something like activity, as simple as it sounds, it's going to help keep things in check because we're bringing more oxygen to the cells. Cancer doesn't like that, it dies. So very, very important. Movement of muscle and joints stimulates the brain. Okay, there's something in the body called the cerebrospinal fluid pump. Has anybody heard of cerebrospinal fluid? Okay, but what it is basically it stimulates the brain. It's your nutrition in your brain, and you get it through spinal motion. Okay, so by having proper spinal motion, actually helps stimulate your brain. It helps bring cerebrospinal fluid. So even that's important when we're talking about movement. Okay, and that's where it goes to proper spinal movement increases your immune system. Okay? Because your immune system, like I think I mentioned this to a lot of people here, like getting adjusted and having the proper movement can boost your immune system 200 to 400% because the way your nerve system controls your immune system. Okay? So can it say chiropractic cures cancer? No, not at all. Okay? But one thing it can say just helps boost that immune system. Okay? So hydration, obviously staying hydrated. We talked about bringing water into the cells, lots of oxygen, H2O, okay, is going to help. Vitamin D, okay, so the sun, this is a tough one, okay, so the thing about the sun is the sun has huge benefits, okay. Vitamin D3, it's actually when you talk about cancer, people, like breast cancer is a big one. Consistently when you find someone with breast cancer, they usually have low vitamin D, okay. So the best way to get it up is the best source is the sun, okay. The sun gets a really bad rap, okay. And if you're in the sun and you burn all the time, that's really, really bad, okay? But at the same time, if you got a little bit of sun, say 10, 15 minutes a day, or some would say even if you had like just a little bit of pink color, it can actually creates more vitamin D for your body. You can't become toxic like you could with food because your body has that regulation system, but it actually helps, again, something that helps prevent cancer, okay? So a lot of people think skin cancer is promoted, it's a balance. Again, that's the key word is balance, because if you get too much of it, it can go the opposite way, okay? And that, if we talked about skin cancer in the sun, we could talk about that for an hour or two, because that's a whole other topic. Because it goes both ways, it really does, okay? And here I have like a pink Himalayan sea salt, if you've ever seen that, okay? So we're talking hydration, balance, so, like a good salt has a ton of trace minerals, okay? So a lot of our foods don't have the magnesium and all these trace minerals that we need. If you actually use a good salt, and good salts actually don't really raise the blood pressure, because a lot of people get worried about blood pressure and things like that, because it's absorbed by the body much better because it has the 100% nutrient profile in it, and it's not just iodized like regular table salt. Okay? So something that you can add that can be beneficial. Okay? And you're going to get potassium and a lot of other good things from that, which are important for your body. We're going to come back to this one. I want to see if I can show you guys something. I had this set up, so we'll see if this works. It's just like 2 minutes from a video. You know me, I probably messed this thing up.